child, that your skin can bring you so much pain. Now I hear you say, you got the best of both ways. Won't you come and take a walk in my shoes and tell me if you take my place?
All right, this weekend's guest on the Inside Running Podcast is a long-time favourite and friend of the show. He first appeared on Inside Running Podcast back on episode 114 and then returned for a part 2 interview on episode 199. And now he's just about to kick off his 2024 Paralympic campaign after recently running a super quick 1500 metres just off his PB. Welcome back to the Inside Running Podcast, Jaryd Clifford.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a while, but it's good to be back on.
Has been a while. I feel like we've spoken a bit like over those years though, and I know recently you're at the Nike Summit event in Melbourne, and Zaka only had good things to say about your speaking gig there. Best on, he told me when there was a panel discussion. So thanks for getting up some time. And whereabouts are you in the world at the moment?
Yeah, so we are in St. Moritz, so the para distance crew is up here. So there's a few of us, me, Angus Hinksman, Michael Roger, my guides, Tim Logan, Matt Clark, and then we've got a triathlete, Sammy Harding, who's visually impaired. His guide is an Olympian, Aaron Royal. So we've got a good crew up here, Philo Saunders' squad. We go into Montpellier in a few days' time, and August 31 is when we kick off things at the Paralympics.
Montpellier, I don't think anyone had heard of that city until like 3 weeks ago, and it feels like every interview I've heard from an elite distance runner or a track and field person as well, that's the place to mention where you've been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were there last year before World Para Athletics Championships, but I had a stressy, so I was pretty much in my room the whole time. So I'll get 3 days to explore. Yeah, I've got bad memories, so I'm hoping I can flip it this time.
Tell me about the memories of St. Moritz. Like, how long you guys been there for? Is it expensive as everyone says it is? Is it as beautiful as it looks on the Instagram reels I see?
I think everything's pretty real with how everyone explains it. It is probably as expensive as I was told, but it is also as good of a training location as I've been told. I think the supermarkets are all right. It's more if you want to get a coffee out, or I think one of our training partners, he got a steak that wasn't that good for about $100, so that might have been a bad decision. But it's epic up here, good training, and it's a bit lower than where we usually go in Flagstaff, and I think going into a championships, the lower altitude's a bit better.
And you've been there for a while? Like, were you still there, like, back of Jess Hull's, like, altitude stint and Jess Stenson? You spotted those guys?
Yeah, at the back of Jess Stenson's for sure. We had all of the marathon girls still up here when we arrived. It's funny because we've seen some of the Olympians before, right after we got here, and then they've come back as well. So their season just keeps rolling. I think Grant Fisher, we saw him 2 days before his first medal, and then he actually came back between the 10K and the 5K. So I can see how it is a mecca for elite distance running in Europe.
Interesting, because the Bauman guys used to do that, I reckon. They go Salt Lake City in the US between their trials. Like, I reckon they'd run the 10K early in their trials campaign, go back to altitude and drop back down for the 5K.
Yeah, it seems crazy because honestly, the travel isn't like super quick. Like, it's almost probably a day's travel. So you'd obviously have to believe in the benefits to put yourself through that. I don't know if it would be for me, but it's definitely like a good place to get away from everything and put the head down and work hard.
Hey, it worked for him though. Like, a couple of medals for the big fella in a very competitive discipline as well, the 5 and the 10K.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, form's good. 1500 metre PB recently. What was that? It was 341.6, just off your personal best. You got to be stoked with how the prep's going.
Yeah, I'm stoked with how the last 12 weeks have gone. I've had a pretty rough trot over the last 3 years. So there's definitely been times, particularly this year, where I reckon I've been really close to losing hope that I'm going to be able to pull it all together when it counts. And so, to run my first 1500 metres, first fast 1500 metres in quite a while in London a few weeks ago was a big relief, and has probably meant actually coming up to this altitude camp, I've come into it with confidence, and therefore I don't have to search for anything in training, which I think can be the most dangerous part of these lead-ups. You know, you kind of realise time's running out, you got to chase a bit of fitness, and that's that comes from not being confident in yourself, and being able to put a time like that, I think, has definitely meant I can hold back and kind of let the training and the fitness come to me rather than chasing it. So yeah, I was really stoked with that 3:41. Is quickest time I've run since before Tokyo. So we're good to go at the moment, I think.
And what were the injuries like? Because it seemed like you'd pop up, have some pretty decent results, and then something would set you back again.
Yeah, I it started pretty much after Tokyo. So I came off the back of that campaign um, with a few mixed emotions from my performances. I won 3 medals, but no gold medals. It was kind of one
Two
of those
silvers and
things.
bronze, wasn't it?
2 silvers and a bronze,
Yeah.
yeah, um, and I just, there was probably at least one of those races where I thought I'd probably let it slip through my fingers a little bit, and that was the 5K. It was quite hot that day, and I just didn't really handle the conditions well enough. So I kind of came away from that, and I'd been away from Melbourne for a year because of COVID and been away from home, and in hindsight, I was quite mentally burnt out from that experience, and just all the pressure I'd put on myself. And I'd been in the elite athlete system since I'd gone to a AIS training camp when I was 13 years old in 2012, and basically my entire time in the sport had been, I guess, geared around winning a gold medal, or that's how it felt. So I have this weird relationship with running. It had probably always been somewhat of a means to an end, and got off the back of Tokyo and hadn't achieved that gold medal, and I've been really looking forward to maybe ticking that off and being able to run without that in the back of my mind. But so anyway, I just had a tough trot after that and probably trained harder than I needed to after Tokyo. And so I got a tibia stress fracture in 2022, middle of the year, after I'd run about a 64:57 half marathon at Noosa. So I was actually training through the Gold Coast Marathon at the time, and decided that I needed to take probably 3 months off running regardless of the injury, just for, I guess, my mental health, and to kind of reassess my goals in running and see if they still landed with the Paralympic Games and chasing that gold medal. It did. The time away kind of made me realize that I loved running for what running was and what running can give me just generally. Running was the thing that, I guess, allowed me to accept and comprehend my impairment and gave me a lot of self-confidence that I struggled to have when I was a kid. And so I really embraced that I liked running because I liked running, not because it was just this vehicle to a gold medal dream that I'd had since I was a kid. And so I kind of got over that hurdle, but then it's kind of felt like that as soon as I got my mind in check, the body started to break down. So between July 2023 and March this year, 2024, I had 3 stress fractures. So I had a crack in my femur before our world champs last year. And then I came back and I got 3 months of training out before getting a tibia stress fracture again. And then I actually didn't have a qualifier for the Paralympic Games, so this is around January this year. And I realized that I was going to have to probably train through it to actually qualify. And so we did this, I guess, block of training where I was running about 50K a week, but I was doing sessions on the uphill treadmill just to take off the load. And so I entered for Vic Milers Club and Nationals.
Was it Box Hill?
Box Hill. Yeah. And so about a week before that, I think because of that uphill treadmill stuff, I actually found out that I had got another stressy in my femur, and still had no qualifiers. So we made the decision that I would stop running for that 3-week period, but I would do the races because I needed to run under 3:51 to qualify. And I had to do it twice in the Paralympics. So I ran 3:48 and 3:50, so I snuck under.
Off no training.
Off very little training. I think, like, for instance, this year, my first 100K week was at the start of July. So,
and what was the causes of all the stresses? Like, was it a nutrition thing?
I think perhaps, like, the one in 2023 could have been. And then I just think everything after that was that my return to run was poorly executed, or it was under the pressure of needing to also run a qualifying time.
Yeah, and that mental stress as well.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty tough year. And then we had our World Championships in May, which is a weird one to have in a Paralympic Games year. But I did that off, I think, 4 weeks off in a 35K week, and ran 15:15 and 3:55 all out. So
16
I've had a
both
pretty
as well. Like, pretty decent.
16 both, yeah. No, it was good. And like, our World Championships aren't nowhere near as strong as Paralympic Games, but it was good to just be in races with visually impaired athletes, which is a different dynamic, and also just, I guess, be in the core room with the athletes that I'm going to be up against in the games, because we don't have a circuit. We don't see them that often or race them. And the Russians are back this year, so we haven't seen them since Tokyo. So it was just good to be out there and get a few runs out, and almost like a reconnaissance mission. But so the body's had a lot of issues, but I've managed to string together probably 12 weeks of running in a row now, 8 weeks of good training. So I'm pretty stoked that it's fallen in place.
Because do you think in the past as well, you guys might have almost peaked a bit too early? Like, this one, you kind of feel like you're building into it, like, especially it's hard when you guys, I'm talking about you and Rogues here, like when you're world record holders in your events, but then slightly just miss gold medals. Like, it must be so frustrating.
Yeah, I think there's two things to that, and I think one of them is definitely that we have probably not peaked at the right time. And I'd almost say it's been more of a mental thing than a physical thing. It's almost,
which is hard to do in Australia because you're peaking twice.
It's just like a long year. And I think because for us, we fixate so much on wanting to win that gold medal, because it's kind of hard to come up with a goal that isn't that when you're, I guess, going in as world record holder, and people ask you a lot of the time. So you kind of end up saying it more often than you probably should, and you can get quite burnt out. And but also, like, I think in the Paralympics, like, I'll still go in as the world record holder in the 1500 meters, for instance, but there's a Russian guy that hasn't had times recorded for 3 years, and perhaps he's run quicker, or there's a lot of the time we go in against athletes that we've never seen before. Like, I ran a 52-second last lap in the 1500 meters in Tokyo, which means it was obviously quite slow at the start, but the guy that came second ran a personal best. But there's no way that could possibly be your personal best.
Was he a Spanish guy as well? The Spanish? He had the yellow and red. Yeah, I remember that.
The Spanish guy's beaten me in the 5K a fair few times now, so he's the one to beat. Yeah, so
he's still
the
fit?
Paralympics he's still going well.
You have nightmares about that guy?
I was actually watching the Women's World Cup last year, and one of the anthems came on, and I started feeling a bit uncomfortable, and I was like, what is going on? And I realised it was the Spanish national anthem. I've heard it too many times.
Starting to get a bit sweaty. Palms.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely the Paralympics is a different dynamic to the Olympic Games. Another dynamic is that we don't have every event, so there's no 800s, for instance. So all the 800 guys have to specialise in the 1500, so that adds different strengths and weaknesses that the Olympics don't necessarily have as well.
And that's new, isn't it? Because Rogues can no longer do 5K or marathon. He can only do 1500 now, can't he?
Yeah, he can only do the 1500 metres, so he's had to pretty much reinvent himself back down to the 1500. And he ran 3:44 last year, 3:48 this year, so he's managed to do it pretty well because he's 36 now, and I think once he went to the marathon at the time, he thought he wasn't coming back. So, but that Paralympic gold still trumps his marathon ambitions. So.
He was getting photos with Prince Harry at London Marathon and stuff, wasn't he? He's back to being a 1500 metre guy. He got bronze as well at the recent world champs. So why are they world champs? How many weeks before? 7 weeks before Paralympics?
Yeah, they were pretty close. So they were in May. It's 2022 was supposed to be a world champs in Kobe, but Japan was still one of the only places in the world that was doing COVID lockdowns and restrictions. So 2023 was already scheduled in Paris. They didn't want to push the world champs to 2025, so they just held it in 2024, which is a bit of a bummer because we don't actually have a World Champs announced yet for 2025. So they're still trying to find a host. So it would have been nice probably to have pushed that back. But a lot of us, we just took it as an opportunity, as an able-bodied athlete would have an opportunity to race it in the Diamond League. Obviously, it comes with a world title, but the goal this year is obviously the Paralympics, and we don't get the opportunity to race our best competitors outside of major championships. So a lot of the team just took it as an opportunity for that.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to replicate that kind of championship racing experience. Hard to do.
Yeah, exactly.
They're it's different bodies and stuff as well. Like I was looking at some past results today. We're trying to do some research, and their website is very, very difficult to try and find your results and everyone's results, and changes in classifications, and that looked a bit outdated. The Para World Champs compared to the stuff that I was looking at for the Paralympics.
Yeah, it's definitely like that. But I guess one of the I can probably go through the Paralympic classification system and the events for distance running now.
Let's do that, because I know it's changed and stuff, and I reckon we would have had this same chat 4 years ago, and the information will be different again. Yeah,
and I think it's so. I wish they'd write it differently, because it appears so complicated when it's pretty simple once you know it. But they could just write it so much simpler. But so in distance running, there is only races for 2 eye conditions. So there's totally blind, and then there's visually impaired, and I'm in the visually impaired one. And then there's, and so that's T11. T11 is totally blind, and then T12/13 is visually impaired. Then T20 is intellectual impairment. T38 is cerebral palsy or coordination impairment. T46 is arm amputee. And T54 is wheelchair, like Kurt Fearnley, for instance. So it sounds like there's 54 categories when we say T54, but there's actually not. The sprints have a few extra ones, but so like the first number. So for my category T12, the first number is 1, and 1 indicates vision, and the 2 is like the degree of impairment. And so there's no T14 to T19. Those categories don't exist. I wish they just, I just call myself the visually impaired world record holder for 1500 meters, which is much more easy for someone to comprehend. And so I kind of wish they did just call the categories what they were rather than the number. But
would it be that? I know it takes up a few extra characters, but is it that hard?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know. It's really annoying, because I think it's one of the barriers between people really following what we do, just because they see all those numbers, and they quite rightfully assume it's complicated and that there's 54 categories when there's probably not. But so I guess for distance running fans out there, you'll see 1500 meters in all those categories I mentioned. You'll see 5Ks for the vision ones and the wheelchair, and you'll see marathons for the vision and the wheelchair categories.
But you're no longer running. You haven't run a marathon for a while?
No, I was.
It's not an option? Or is it an option, but not a destination?
It's not going to happen this time. I had permission to run the international entry, the minimum entry standard, which would never qualify you for the Australian team if that was your only event. But as like a secondary event, all I had to do was run under 3 hours, and I could have done it, because I didn't do any training specifically for it before Tokyo, which showed in the race, I think. But the body's not really been kind to me to even think about that. So we're just on the track this time.
Didn't do any prep in the marathon for Tokyo, but you still ran 2:17, 2:18. 2:19.
No, I ran 2:19 in Penrith when I paced Rogues.
That's right. You kept going, didn't you?
In Tokyo. Yeah, well, I sat down for 30 seconds.
That's right.
My Strava time was 2:18:30. But Philo kind of ran up to me and he said, "Well, you've already kind of cooked it. You've already run 36K. Your body's going to be cooked anyway. You may as well do the last 6." So
just tell people the 2:18. the elapsed time.
Yeah.
Oh, the
It's,
moving time. 2:19:08
yeah,
too. Pretty close.
yeah,
Jeez, you got me covered. And
yeah.
I've been trying to do this for years. You were just out there pacing and then held on and sat down for a while.
I think it was a quick course. We were on the Penrith Regatta, and for me with my vision, it was perfect. It was literally up and back in a straight line, and then on the corners, I just go behind. It was Rogues and Nick Earl, so it was perfect for me. So I think that's the other thing with my vision that a lot of people probably don't really comprehend sometimes is that I find it like very rare when I get into a race situation where I can fully open up and probably get the best out of myself. And my 1500 PB is from a track classic where it was so spread out. I came third, but I was 6 seconds behind the leader, and I think I was 3 seconds behind the person behind me. So I ran that whole thing, basically time trial, but with pacemakers at the start, but no jostling. And for instance, like that's one of those situations where I can get the most out of myself. And that marathon was a chance where I could probably run with my impairment not impairing me that much, just because it was straight the whole way.
Which isn't
the
championship
5K
racing though, is it? Like that's not
No,
what
it's
you're
not.
gearing up for next week.
No, it's not, and that's why. And you know what? The roughest race you'll ever get in is a visually impaired race because no one can see where they're stepping. So it's as rough as it gets. So we've been practicing that, and I practice it in training, and I put myself in those races. When even at Box Hill when it's dark and I can see even less, just because I need to practice that. And yeah, so I'm hoping we've got morning races in Paris, so it'll be good.
Which will be about 6 p.m. our time, I think, won't it?
Yeah, it's going to be good. So prime time for everyone. I think Saturday, August 31 and Tuesday, September 3.
Straight finals?
There is technically heat scheduled for the 1500, but they normally scrap them because we have, I don't know why, but our Paralympic Village only allows 4,000 athletes. And there's 10,000 for the Olympics. It's the same village, but that's why entries are lower. So they try and make the qualifiers hard enough so that heats aren't necessary.
Okay. Have you had like communication with, like I know Maddie Clark, who went to the Olympics, is one of your guides as well, about what to expect about the village? Like it's almost like those guys do a dress rehearsal for you and they come back and go, don't eat from the pasta, don't do this, take an extra mattress protector. Like you guys, get a bit of an advantage going in second there.
Yeah, we do. And Avish Sharma's up here with us as well, and he was at the games. And so he, I guess has filled us in on everything and all logistics, all the training tracks, which ones are better, which ones are closer. And yeah, it's pretty good. Like the Paralympics team gets a handover from the Olympic team, and everything's kind of running smoothly by then. So I think as well, getting information about what the stadium's going to be like. I've only run in front of a big crowd probably once in my career in Rio, and we're expecting the crowds to be quite big for the Paralympics this year. And for me, I actually haven't run with loud noise like that. And hearing is something that I use quite frequently in a race, and often in local races in Victoria, I use the commentary to make sure that I haven't lost gaps in the field, or like if I'm running behind someone, I can't see if they've dropped off the person in front of them. So I usually use the commentary and cues like that. But in an environment like this stadium, it was good to be reminded by people like Matt that that's probably not going to be an option. And just to be prepared for that and not be shocked by it. It's obviously like a no-brainer once you think about it, but yeah, it's one of those things that maybe I don't often realize how much I'm tapping into those things until they're taken away.
Yeah. And this is not so much personally for you, but like I do like asking you questions because I feel like I can ask them to you as like Jaryd Clifford, the runner, and also like Jaryd Clifford, who might one day be in a leadership position at the Paralympic movement and be able to like fix these things. But like, Do you think going second, I know there's been campaigns about like the Olympic Games and the warm up for the Paralympics and things like that, but I was saying to you off air, because everything's now so in your face, documented. Social media use has increased massive. I don't want to hear the name Ray Gun again for the next 6 months, because that's the only thing the kids at school even talk about. Like, they can't tell me who 3 Australian gold medalists are, but they can tell me about our breakdancers and things like that. So because it's everywhere, the Olympics, and I felt like I needed a bit of a break this last week, and I just didn't want to consume any athletic stuff because there was so much of it for 10 days. Do you feel like the Paralympics is now at a disadvantage because it has to try and spark people back up for when you guys kick off next week?
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean, just because even when, even us watching it here, because we were in the right time zone, you basically have it on the whole day.
Yeah.
And I was pretty stoked when it came to an end, just because it was so much. And
we're also coming off lack of sleep as well, so we're tired and worn out here in Australia and trying to watch it. Yeah,
exactly, and I definitely understand that. But it's funny because when I do public speaking or when I come on different podcasts, one of the most asked questions is, and it's often asked with an implication of what they think the answer is, and that is, should the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games be combined? And often people who are big allies of the Paralympic movement, who are trying to get behind it and support it, often assume that the answer is that they should be combined.
Okay.
And
I never even thought about that, to be honest, until you just mentioned it. Yeah,
we had it a lot. Well, I got asked it at that Nike event, for instance, and it got asked a lot after the Commonwealth Games, where the public was sold this false story that para had been combined into the Commonwealth Games, and it had been, but there'd been only 5 events, for instance, in athletics being put in.
Yeah.
And it was also sold as if it was the first time ever, but actually 5 events had always been in the Commonwealth Games, but the medals hadn't counted. It was the first time medals had counted. That was the new thing at Gold Coast. So we got asked that heaps, and the thing is, that would be terrible for us, because we are realistic and we understand that our events will not overshadow the men's 100 meters. We will definitely play second fiddle. So I really like that there's a gap. And then coming back to what you were saying, this is a 2-week window that people with disabilities, we only get a window like this once every 4 years, and it's only in sport. We don't get it in any other part of society. And it's 2 weeks window into a world where people with disabilities are given the resources and opportunities to excel. And we basically get to show the world that we can do that. And it's basically hopefully a lesson to wider society, is that if you put in the investment into people with disabilities, this is what can occur. And it doesn't just have to be contained to sport. But I think why that saturation won't be a problem is that when you tune into the Paralympic Games, you will see things that you have never seen before. And you will see humanity in a way that you have never seen before. And you will see sport through a totally new lens that you've never seen before. I don't think many people will have watched a table tennis player play with no hands and serve the ball with his toes, or you wouldn't see someone running with no arms or legs, and someone pushing a wheelchair with one arm, people doing backstroke fully blind, someone donking them on the head so they know when to turn.
Yeah.
Like, you will see stuff that will just make you go wow. And I think also Paralympians are the best storytellers in sport, because if we didn't learn how to tell our stories, you guys wouldn't know we exist.
Yeah.
And so therefore we've had to grow up with that ability to tell you effectively and succinctly, this is what happened to us as kids. This is what we had. This was our adversity. Sport was our, journey to overcoming that. And, now this is what we can do on the sporting arena. And so I think the Olympics is so good because it's like the pinnacle of human achievement. But I think the Paralympics is the pinnacle of humanity overcoming adversity. And I think it's more relatable to everyday people, because everyday people go through adversity on a daily basis. And this is just, showing what's possible when adversity can strike. So I think the Paralympics tells its own very unique story that the Olympics doesn't have, to be honest.
Yeah, very well put. Yeah, it's you kind of give me goosebumps hearing that kind of stuff. Like, it's got me. It's got. I think the gap between the Paralympics and the Olympics has been good. Like, it gives everyone a chance to just switch off from that and then get hyped again. Why do you think the difference in the number of competitors? Like, is that a logistics thing or a funding thing, or what do you put that down to?
Yeah, if you watch. And I actually can't. Oh, Rising Phoenix is the Netflix documentary that came out, I think, before Tokyo. And it runs through, there's one part where it runs through the Rio Games. And I remember sitting in Florida, the team camp beforehand, and Kurt Fearnley got up and spoke. And it's probably the best speech that I've ever heard. And it was because we were about this time out from the games and 2 weeks out, and articles were starting to be published saying that there was a chance the games were going to be cancelled last minute because they'd run out of money. And he gave this speech saying, some of us have, come from rehab hospitals, and, we've come from nothing. Most of us have done this without any sponsors, without much funding, and we've gotten to this point. If everyone's gotten up and left the village and we have to cook for ourselves in that village, we'll do it, and we'll still show the world what we can do. And that was kind of the speech. And that's just a story, a bit of a tangent, but the Paralympics has a hell of a lot less money than the Olympic Games, for sure. And I think we're still very donor based in Australia, for instance. And I think now with TV rights it's starting to change, but I think bringing in 10,000 athletes versus 4,000 would potentially double the cost for the IPC.
Yeah.
And so I think it's as simple as that, to be honest. But it's a bummer because then people like Michael Roger miss out on a marathon because they're trying to keep the numbers down because they want to add new sports. So they have to cull somewhere else if they're not going to raise the total number of athletes that can come to the Paralympics. So, yeah, it's funny. Like, I think I said the other day, the first Paralympic Games was in 1964. And the first Olympic Games was in 1896. So we're 60 years into our history. 60 years into the Olympics was 1956. And so we're probably at that level in terms of our development as like a global diversity event. It's still got a long way to grow, I think.
Yeah, good point. What are some, we all know you, listeners of our podcast and Rogues, but what are some other like people we should be watching out for next week?
Oh, there's heaps. I'm pretty stoked. Like, we've got such a good team going to go, and I'll run through like the distance athletes. So, you've obviously got me. I'll be doing the 1500 5K. We've got Rogues. Rogues will be going in the 1500 meters. So Rogues has won a bronze medal at Paralympic level in 2016 in the 1500 meters. And he ran the marathon in Tokyo and came, I think, 6th or 7th, but he had a pretty bad injury that he was running on. So Rogues is chasing that elusive gold, but also he's only won one Paralympic medal. So I know, he just wants to make sure he's on that podium at a minimum. And then we've got a debutant, Angus Hinksman. He's in the cerebral palsy class, T38.
South Australian guy?
Yeah, South Australian. So he's coached by Simon Moran, huge talent. He's just turned 19. He got a bronze at his first World Championships last year. He's just lowered his personal best by 6 seconds last week to 3 minutes and 51. And, he's super passionate about the movement. And it's probably the first time in my career where I've been able to feel that camaraderie that the Paralympic team prides itself on in passing down our values. And, I love seeing he gets a little bit annoyed by, say, Paralympics flying under the radar, something that I would have been triggered by as a kid. And I see him getting triggered by it, and I go, yes, let's go. Like, we've got someone else that's going to pump it up. So
he had posters of you on his wall a couple of years ago. Did you ask him?
Oh, I don't know. He's. I don't think he'd let me know if he did. So
it'd be a bit awkward, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but he's awesome, and he's a medal chance. And that race is going to be super exciting because we've got the world lead for this year in that category is by Reece Langdon, who's also an Aussie. Just run 3:49, so another huge personal best for him. He's coached by Tim O'Shaughnessy.
AV scene will know Reece. Is it all the cross-country races throughout winter?
Yeah, he absolutely loves it. And I know, him and Angus are both Nike athletes now too, which is super exciting for the Paralympic movement. And Reece is, he has a brain injury when he was younger, so he falls into like the coordination impairment side of that category. And he only was classified in the last couple of years. And so, that's pretty exciting because we've had Dion Kenzie be quite dominant in Australia in that category for a long time. He won 2 Paralympic medals, and he actually, as a testament to the class and how good it's got, he missed out on qualification for Paris 2024, and they'll be up against a Canadian who's the world record holder, and there's a new American who, right when Tokyo was happening, he actually had a car accident, was in a coma for a while, and 10 months out of the coma, according to his World AS profile, he ran a 28:20 5:10K and down to a 4:03 mile. So we haven't seen times from him recently, but that's who those boys are up against. So it's going to be a cracker of a race for those boys. And then rounding out the guys, we've got Sam Rizzo in the T54 events. So he'll be doing the 1500 meters and the 5K. So he's a young guy from Ballarat, coached by Richard Coleman, and he broke Kurt Fernley's 1500 meters Australian record earlier in the year to qualify for the games. So I'm sure everyone knows or has heard of Kurt Fernley. So it's a pretty special record in Australian parathletics to be breaking. So, big Paralympics for him. And then on the girls' side, we've got Annabelle Coleman in the T20 1500 meters. So she's coached by Anthony De Castella and Liz Gosper, runs for Old Zavs. She's as tough as nails. She's the kind of athlete that she kind of goes out with the leaders and hangs with them as long as possible. And I just know we're not far away from that tactic sticking, and she'll be right up there for the medals in the future. But she's like a young gun, rising star, debut games. And then the last distance athlete is Madison De Rosario, who I'm sure everyone knows, marathon gold in Tokyo, does all the major marathons, and she'll be going in the marathon again. So that's a very competitive event, the women's wheelchair.
And they just back up. Like she'll do a London or a Boston, and then the week after be in London. She gets the most airtime of anyone when you watch a world marathon major from an Australian point of view. Yeah,
she loves it. I think the wheelchair racing is probably a little bit more like cycling in terms of the ability to back up.
Yeah.
But which is great for them because of the move to having equal prize money for the marathons.
It's pretty good to
Eliud
do
Kipchoge can't back up every week, but the wheelies can, so they can rake it in.
Yeah, I don't know how much prize money he's grabbing in the next couple of years after his recent performances, but probably a bit more competitive too. A few more young bucks are coming up in the marathon and the para, like in the wheelies. You reckon? Like it seems to be the same paces that kind of do the races.
Yeah, I think so, and I think like it's funny that Maddie does perform quite well in those majors, but she's a major championship beast. Like she won Tokyo because she made a move up this hill that was kind of towards the end of that course, whereas a lot of those major marathons are quite flat, as you know, and it's just like they can push up to 20 minutes quicker on those courses than in the major championships. So but she's gone from being like a track road hybrid to just being a marathon specialist. So she'll have her tactics sorted. The course for us for the Paralympic marathons is different, I'm pretty sure, to the Olympics, just because it would be absolutely brutal to have the wheelies pushing up that hill. It might be entertaining to watch, but it might go for a while.
Take a while to get up them. Hey, back to you, mate. Like, how are you managing the pressure? Like, being there at Rio as like a 17-year-old, I think it was, and then put the pressure on yourself massively with the expectations at Tokyo. It's all going to kick in next week again. Like, you've got into this form again, so you know you're fit. Like, what things have you got in place to give yourself the best chance of executing to get a gold medal?
Yeah, I think remembering all the lessons that I've learned, and actually making sure I'm living them and they're not just this rhetoric that I can say in an interview like this, and making sure I'm actually living and breathing those things that I learned, and particularly that idea of I thought winning gold in Tokyo would like complete me. Like I thought, like this is everything I've thought about every day for 10 years, and it's finally here, and it's going to happen exactly how I've envisioned it, and it's going to be all good. And then the guy runs past you, and you get a shock, and you realize it's not going to. And I think I think that happened, and I think I struggled so much after because of that mentality that I went in with, like always thinking about gold, very outcome based thinking. And so I think I've flipped that, and I think one of the biggest blessings from Tokyo is that I did fall short, and I now know what it's like to fall short, and I know that it's fine, and I know it's okay, and I know I'll survive and get up the next day. Whereas technically before Tokyo, I can spin a story in my head and be like, it's gold or nothing, and you'll be like, you won't be able to get back up. But I'll actually be able to run with the courage of knowing what it's like to fall short and knowing that it's okay. And I think actually that freedom is what allows you to not run with any tension and run relaxed. And it's almost like the moment I realize I can be happy not winning a gold medal my entire career is almost the moment that gold medal might become more possible. And so, yeah, I realized that, yeah, I just have to make sure that that start line is the only place I want to be when I'm standing on it, because I love running and I love that I can stand in front of a big crowd and do what I love to do, and just do the best that I can. And I'm going to be standing on that start line with Tim Logan, who's been my best mate since I was a kid and who's lived with me for the last 5 years basically, and is someone that's sacrificed a lot to kind of help me train properly, train safely, live well. And I'm really stoked that he's going to be standing on that start line, and then Matt Clark's going to be bringing it home. And I think, to be honest, when you get to do it with someone, when you make that move and you're not alone, I think that's like a huge advantage for me. So yeah, like I'll be not tuning into social media as much as I had probably done in Tokyo, and I won't be buying into other people's expectations, and I won't feel insecure about what other people are saying about my performances, or insecure about maybe trying to explain that like the Paralympic Games are so much harder to predict than the Olympic Games, just because you don't know the characters that are on the start line with you. You sometimes don't know how fit someone is until they make a move with a lap to go. They might have been a 16-minute 5K guy on their PB listing. So I used to be really insecure about people not understanding the Paralympics and then judging performances with limited information, for instance. But I think one of the best things I did was probably just tuning out, backing myself, being confident in what I've done. And yeah, so I think it's just basically limiting noise is the summary of that.
We've kind of seen that as well with Ollie Hoare recently, and Sinead in her kind of post the DNF in the marathon. Like it's some noise is good, but not necessarily that much noise that's going to impact performance. And I'm sure you've seen that Jemima Montag interview, like after her race. Like I think there was some line in there about, I want a medal, but I don't need a medal. Or so, like it's not. Yeah. And I just absolutely love it. Like as a teacher of kids, and not that I have anything to do with high performance sport or anything like that, I was just like, oh wow, that interview was like amazing to listen to, about how your self-worth can be connected, I guess, to results, and it's not. Like as you said, the sun comes up, your family still loves you, all those kind of things the next day. Like no one thinks of you any less if it's a gold medal or it's a fourth place.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've read that from Jemima, and that's exactly the mentality that I'd been working on, I guess, since the aftermath of Tokyo. And yeah, I just think it's so true. And it's like that whole thing about the sun coming up and your family loving you. It's like, it's funny, like, you know, that's true, and you know
Still want it
that
though, don't
that's
you?
what would happen. Yeah, but then it's like, you know, it's all true, but until you've actually fallen short and you feel that it's true and you experience that it's true, like, it's technically just a theory in your mind. And that's why I'm just like, with Tokyo, like, that did happen to me, and I had an army there to pick up the pieces and help me back, and it didn't change my self-worth, obviously. And that's something that it's so easy to say that we know that, but until we feel it, you technically don't. So I think it's just, honestly, the biggest blessing going into this campaign is that I didn't win in Tokyo. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I heard Andy talk about that before. Like, the biggest, success he had was getting a stress fracture and missing Fukuoka Marathon. Like, he doesn't reckon he would have qualified for or hit his 208 and then go to the Olympics if he didn't get injured. Like, which is odd to hear people say, but I think you're on the money there. You'll have a few more people watching you at Paris, family and friends all going over because they couldn't get there at Tokyo, of course.
Yeah, I think it ebbs and flows depending on things coming up, but I think I've got about 50 people coming over to watch, so it's going to be massive. I've got people coming from high school that I haven't even seen in 8 years, so I can't wait. It's going to be super special. We've already organised. We're going to go to a beer garden on the 4th of September and spend the whole afternoon there. So if anyone's in Paris, feel free to come by, and we'll be celebrating, I guess, like, almost 8 years, really. We didn't get the chance to celebrate too much after Tokyo. So, I'm just super stoked that we get to do it in front of everyone. And my grandma's coming over, which I'm pretty happy about. And, it's just going to be super special. And doing it with Tim and Matt as well, in front of everyone is a pretty special moment. So, I can't wait.
Final one from me, mate, and on behalf of our audience, like, what's one more thing that we need to know about the Paralympics and all the classifications, or, when we're sitting home, will we putting the TV on when we're probably eating dinner? Like, give us one more, like, pearl of wisdom, educate us about the movement, the events, what is it we need to know? Put you on the spot here, I know. And you've already given me 45 minutes of good stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think, like, go into it with an open mind. And I feel like the running community, in the way that they've supported me throughout my career, is something, I guess, kind of new in a lot of ways to elite running in Australia. I think we're quite good at it as runners, like having an open mind going in. And I think that's what you need for the Paralympics, because you'll probably see some stuff that confuses you. You'll see some things, particularly in swimming, where it'll look like people with totally different disabilities are competing against each other. But I guess going with an open mind and use it as a chance to learn about disability and learn about how people with disabilities go about things. And a lot of the time, I think it's like 1 in 5 Australians have a disability, but we're exposed to people with disabilities so little in the media, but even in everyday life. So I guess watch it as a sporting event for sure, but watch it as a human event. And I guess if you do that, you'll see the lessons. And our values as a Paralympic team are all about camaraderie, lifting each other up, and passing values down the line. So I think you'll see that through the Channel 9 coverage. You'll see how much of, like, a mob is what we call ourselves, the Australian Paralympic team is. So if it's your first time tuning in, brace yourselves, because you're gonna be in for a real treat. And but also the Australian athletics team, learn, like I've just said, the distance guys, and there's heaps of other people that I wish were front and center names in Australian athletics, and they're just probably not. And this is going to be one chance for you to get to know them. And as we all know, when you know about someone and you know their story, you're so much more invested in their performances. And, it's only 8 years till Brisbane, and I can tell you our team's quite young. Most of the people that you'll watch at these games will be there in Brisbane. And I think it's just better for the sport if we can tune in and lift us up. And I think it's better for athletics in Australia as a whole when Paralympic athletics is given the support as well. So, well, thanks for everyone's support. And, I was looking back today through some photos, and I know everyone, particularly in the Victorian running community, has really supported me since I was a kid. And I never forget that. So,
mate,
thanks for getting behind us.
We've got thousands of listeners who are a whole lot more excited knowing to follow your journey over the next week or two. And massive thank you for giving up your time. I know you're switching things off soon with media appearances and things like that, and I appreciate that you still got 60 minutes for us old boys over at the Inside Running podcast. And I think today is as well. It's International Day of People with a Disability. One of the not-for-profits I do work for here. Yep. I was just had a meeting earlier about this fun run we organise and stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm talking to Jaryd tonight. This is like the perfect day for me to have these conversations and learn a bit more. And on behalf of everyone at the Inside Running podcast family, good luck. Can't wait to watch it. Be yelling at our TVs. Listeners, the same thing. Just you've already got that app ready. You've been tuned into the Olympics for the last couple of weeks. You know how to do it. Don't annoy us with how to stream this stuff. It's going to be straightforward and ready to go.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks for having me on again. And thanks everyone.
Last one, mate, before we go. Just give us one of the hardest workouts you've done recently. We've got to get a training question in there. Give us some splits. Yeah. What's been the one that you've nearly vomited or potentially have vomited hitting over the last 7-10 days?
We did one recently, which was just at altitude in St. Moritz. It was 2K, 1600, 1200, 800, 400, 200 with 3 minutes rest. The first few were pretty tempo-y threshold, 3 minute Ks, but then we had to step it down. So I did the 800 in 2 flat, the 400 in 58, and the 200 was probably 29, but I think I threw up before that. But it was all with the tether, and it is hard. The tether's 30 centimeters, so it is harder to run, and that's why we're practicing at the moment. And so I was pretty stoked that I was able to get out the 2 flat on the tether with Clarkey. So we're ready to go for the last bit of that 5K.
Yeah, big kick down incoming. Thanks, mate, and all the best for the last couple of days of preparation.
No worries. Thank you.